The CIA has a public reading room. It's been online for years. Most people have never heard of it, but cannot be corrected without the creator providing a verifiable source for the underlying claim. The document must be named or cited, or the claim must be reframed as speculative, not removed, restructured. And I keep thinking about what that distinction means. The document itself is where this gets specific. What's in the CIA's CREST database? The CIA record search tool that's been publicly searchable since 2017 isn't one smoking file. It's hundreds of thousands of pages. Most of them are genuinely bureaucratic. Procurement logs, personnel memos, the kind of material that confirms, if nothing else, that large institutions produce enormous quantities of paper. But the document that triggered the access restructuring isn't bureaucratic, not in the way a procurement log is bureaucratic. It contains operational language, specific deliberate phrasing about how information environments can be shaped, not in wartime, not in foreign theaters, but in domestic contexts. The framing is careful. The agency's authors were clearly aware they were writing something that could be read two ways, and that awareness is itself worth sitting with, because you don't write defensively unless you expect a reader who isn't on your side. Now, I want to do something here that I think is necessary. There's a version of this document story that circulates in certain corners of the internet, the version that involves mind control programs, direct neurological influence, the claim that the document is a blueprint for something that was tested on American citizens in ways that go well beyond any acknowledged program. I'm not going to give that reading the same weight. Not because those programs didn't exist in some form. MKulture is a matter of public congressional record, investigated by the Church Committee in 1977 and confirmed, though most of the original program files were destroyed by CIA Director Richard Helms in 1973 before the investigation began. But because this document doesn't need that framing, the fringe interpretation actually obscures what's more unsettling about it. Strip away the most dramatic reading, and what remains is still more specific than the official explanation accounts for. Here's what I mean. The document uses a phrase, and I'm being deliberately careful here, that describes the management of public belief as a logistical problem, not a communication problem, not a transparency problem, a logistical one. That's a specific word choice. It tells you something about how the authors understood their own work. It also contains a section on timing, specifically when certain kinds of information are most effectively introduced and when they are most effectively withheld. The section isn't abstract. It references audience states. It references what the authors call receptivity windows. That's not the vocabulary of a press office. That's the vocabulary of an operation. And then there's the metadata. The document was uploaded to CREST without the classification review flag that typically accompanies sensitive releases, which either means the review happened and was cleared without annotation, routine, possibly, or it means something moved through the system without the standard checkpoint. I don't know which. What I do know is that when researchers flagged that gap, the response from the agency was that the upload process had been updated, not that the document had been reviewed, that the process had been updated. Those three things individually, the logistical framing, the receptivity window language, the missing review annotation, each has an explanation. The framing is professional jargon. The timing section is standard communication theory. The metadata gap is a procedural artifact. But together, they form a pattern, and I want to use that word deliberately, because the pattern is the point, not any single detail. The fact that a document describing how to manage public belief was uploaded without standard review, then accessed so heavily that the access architecture changed. And then, when researchers asked about the metadata gap, the agency responded by describing a process update rather than a content review. That sequence is the pattern. Does the fact that this document was restructured after it went viral feel like bureaucratic housekeeping to you, or does it feel like something else? Because the next part is where this stops being about one document and starts being about the system that produced it. That phrase, receptivity windows, does that read to you as standard communication theory, or does it read as something more deliberate than that? Drop your answer in the comments below, because where this goes next is the part that made me stop and reread the document twice. So here's where the pattern stops being historical and starts being architectural. The document that triggered the access restructuring didn't exist in isolation. It came out of a system, a specific deliberate system. And once you understand how that system actually works, the restructuring stops looking like housekeeping and starts looking like the system doing exactly what it was designed to do. Here's the mechanism. No change needed to this sentence. It is correct. Fix the earlier misidentification in issue number 1. It holds approximately 930,000 documents, totaling more than 12 million pages spanning the Cold War, covert action, and the agency's most requested collections. That number is important because it creates cover. When you release 300,000 documents, the ones that matter disappear inside the ones that don't. The bureaucratic mass is the camouflage, and FOIA itself, the mechanism most people assume, is the public's lever of accountability, functions in practice as a soft delay system. Researchers who find a document of interest on the CREST search engine, but who cannot access the physical archive, will tend to request the declassified record under FOIA instead, thereby increasing demand on the already backlogged CIA FOIA process. Read that again slowly. The act of making records technically searchable, while keeping physical access restricted, doesn't open the archive. It floods the request queue. The backlog becomes the barrier. Visibility becomes a substitute for access, and most people never notice the difference. That's not an accident. That's architecture. Now, bring it back to the document, the one this started with. The one with the receptivity window language and the missing review annotation. As of right now, in 2026, that document is still technically available. You can find it. The reading room hasn't been taken down. The agency evidently believes that there are latent secrets concealed in the declassified record that could somehow be extracted by a clever analyst, and that protecting such secrets is more important than providing improved public access to the historical record. That's the agency's own framing, applied to its own archive. Latent secrets, in documents that have already been declassified. Sit with that for a moment. The argument isn't that the document is classified. The argument is that a declassified document, read carefully enough by someone who knows what they're looking for, could still be dangerous. That's a very specific kind of concern. It's not about protecting sources, it's about protecting interpretations. And that's the payoff I've been building toward. What I'm not saying is that the document was suppressed. It wasn't. It's still there. What I am saying is that the system around it, the backlog architecture, the access restructuring, the process update response that never address the content, those are not neutral administrative choices. They are the operational layer. The document describes how to manage public belief as a logistical problem. The system surrounding the document demonstrates exactly that management in real time. The description and the demonstration are the same thing. That's the distinction that made me stop and reread it twice. The same one I mentioned before. Not removed, restructured. A document explaining the management of information environments was itself placed inside a managed information environment. The agency didn't hide it. They released it into a system that makes certain things findable in theory and functionally invisible in practice. I'm not saying I know what they didn't want you to read. I'm saying the official explanation that this was routine document management has never been fully satisfying because routine document management doesn't produce a logistical framing, a receptivity window section, and a missing review annotation in the same file. The ancient institutions that acknowledged the forces they couldn't fully control, that named them, studied them, built systems around understanding them, those are the ones whose methods we're still analyzing. The people who download this document and read it carefully are not the ones being managed. They're the ones doing the managing of their own understanding. And that distinction, it turns out, is the only one that actually matters. Subscribe if knowing how the reading room works changes how you read the news. Watch the next one.